episode 12 of PopNerdery, the show that is nerdier than referring to the sounds of the ocean as waves.wave. This is a place where you are allowed to have an opinion on anything in pop culture, but you got to have more than just a little bit to say. We'll pick out some of the headlines that have us talking this week, then we will do a deep dive, and then go ahead and give our pop culture recommendations to each other and to you, the listeners. Thank you for joining us on this podcast. Welcome if it is your first time. I am your host, Brent, and with me, as always, are the other two to complete the trio of our lone gunmen, Toe and Dave. What's up, gents?
Hey!
How we doing?
Here we are.
We're
Fantastic.
here.
We're
podcasting.
That was aggressive. That was an affirmation right there, and I liked it.
Hey!
You know what else is affirming? How you can follow us at PopNerdery. First choice you have is on the Twitters at PopNerdery, PopNerdery. We comment on things as they happen. We argue, we love, we live, we dance. Although it's a print medium, so dancing is tough, but you'll see it. It's interpretive. You'll like it.
It's the best you're gonna get.
Correct. You got a couple ways to listen to the show. First is to fire up the iTunes. Head on over to the iTunes store, fire up the podcast section, and jump to that search box, type in PopNerdery, and bam, there we are making audio magic. You can rate the show, you can review the show, you can subscribe to the show, you can tell us how much you like having our words in your ear holes. And trust me, you like having our words in your ear holes. Second way is fire up the website, popnerdery.com. We archive all the episodes there. We comment, we talk. Again, dancing is tougher, but a little bit easier because there's embedded video, so more dancing.
Emojis work wonders too, let's be honest.
Just eggplant, corn cob, splash, splash. Pretty much to everything, whatever the comment is.
That's how I dance in real life, IRL.
That's how I made 2 children. The final and probably most important way that you have to listen to the show is to go ahead and translate the episode title into Gallifreyan, slip that into your TARDIS, have that appear directly over Dave's shoulder at 2:30 p.m. on Wednesday next week. You got to send it in the future, and Dave will come to your house and podcast live for you.
I will do it. I love when you're watching something about time travel media, or you're watching like a guy, like a scientist who
who travels through time.
No, like a scientist,
a science guy.
A scientist who really is befuddled or bewildered by the idea of time travel.
A timeologist?
Kind of like a Stephen Hawking or
a chrononaut
or a Dean Kamen, those kind of guys.
All right.
Where they're like, listen, the best thing in the world that anyone could possibly invent is a time machine, and if somebody invented one, I would want them to come back to right now. And then they just wait for a second, as if like the time machine inventor of the future will find that interview.
Saw that on whatever YouTube exists 200 years in the future and went, well, fuck with it, watch this.
Exactly. So if any time travelers are listening to this in the future, we would like you to come back to right now.
They're
They're waiting till 2:30 p.m. next Wednesday.
Wait,
my drink did get refilled though.
By here, maybe we need to clarify, because we're podcasting from 3 separate locations.
That's a good point.
Maybe the time traveler didn't feel committed enough to go to your office,
right,
Dave, and maybe they felt like you were asking them to somehow pop simultaneously in all 3 locations at once,
yes.
And so they didn't want to create that paradox. And
he's like, I don't have the ability
reason.
to deal with a multiverse. I just can go one place at one time, guys.
Right.
It's a good point.
Right.
It's a really good point. Speaking of multiverses, speaking of paradoxes, in our B segment today, we're going to talk about the dream world in which we have enough time to ingest all of the media that we want to. And then when that runs out of steam in about 5 minutes, we're going to talk about what we do to deal with the world we live in now, in which we don't have enough time. So in the B segment, that's what we'll be talking about, time and why we don't have enough of it. And right now we're going to talk about the news. So the news this week is a little bit light. We're going to go pretty quick. The first is just this afternoon, Chris Pratt teased us with a picture on Instagram.
With his rippling abs.
Exactly.
Oh, no? Different.
I was excited about both of them. I saw that one too, Brent, and I liked it just as much.
It was slightly different, but he was teasing the start of filming for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
He had the pants on.
Yes, he had the pants on, and he tweeted a picture.
He had other things on too, but he had the pants on.
He tweeted a picture of the Sony Walkman holding the Awesome Mix Volume 2 with like a nice long, hey, I feel lucky to be here kind of thing. Chris Pratt is an all-around good dude. I enjoy Chris Pratt here and again, and I don't think I could be more excited about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Yeah, I was super skeptical of the first movie, and it delivered in so many ways that I so trust whatever they're going to do with Volume 2. And while I don't know about the good-natured tendencies of Chris Pratt, I don't go over to his house for Sunday brunches like it seems Dave does. But I do think that everything I've ever seen him in, he's hilarious, and he is great in interviews. So, big fan.
Brent, Chris Pratt doesn't know that I am at his house for Sunday brunch. Can you keep
that was a secret. Don't let that out of quiet. Jesus, dude.
They don't actually pour me a mimosa. I just make my own with their leftovers.
Out of the garbage mimosas that are available.
Garbage mimosas.
Since Chris Pratt teased us not with his abs, but with a picture of a cassette tape, young listeners, a cassette tape is a thing that you used to put inside of a Walkman. Listeners, a Walkman is an electronic device that was kind of like an iPod. Listeners, an iPod was kind of like that little app inside of your iPhone, but like a real physical thing. I think we're there yet. I think we got there.
You skipped over the Discman progression and the fact that CDRs were worth their weight in gold at one point in my life.
That is true. That is true. I paid a kid to make me CDRs.
Yeah.
Yeah, fun fact, the first CDR I made, I then took a ballpoint pen to try and label.
Oh, God.
Screwing up the disc, and I was too embarrassed to actually ask my friend to burn me a new one. So
6 20-year-olds went, why would that be a problem?
Anyway, since he showed us a copy of the cassette tape, and we all loved the soundtrack from the first movie so much, I was wondering if there is a song or songs that you guys might be looking forward to, and yes, I'm stalling a little bit to give you some time to think, that you'd like to hear on the Guardians soundtrack Volume 2. I'll start, and I think I'd like to hear some Queen. Give me anything by Queen in that movie. I think it fits in the realm of what they were going for on that first soundtrack.
So the obvious choice is Bowie.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the real one that actually kind of fits thematically what they did with that one would be Eric Burden and Wine. Eric Burden in War, Spill the Wine, which just has that perfect like pop funk thing that they did with the rest of that soundtrack, and would fit really well with Redbone and Blues.
There you go. Why didn't we start the Pop Funk podcast, guys?
Oh, you fucking should have. Jesus.
As soon as we recruit some more podcasters, spin off.
We'll be branching off to the pod funk.
You start we had Parliament, then we had P Funk, then we had P Funk All Stars. Like we'll just continually. It'll be like Wu-Tang. Wu-Tang is for the children.
I definitely have some ideas, but I think we need to establish first, do we know with a fair amount of confidence that it will be like the same era of music? Because I think Volume 2, we might be able to pull off like 80s, 90s music. Who knows where the Volume 2 is going to come from, right?
If we make the assumption that he got that one as, that was the tape he was listening to as he left Earth, and we know he was supposed to be transported, that there hypothetically could be stuff waiting for him wherever he was supposed to end up, which could include a 90s, 2000 tape. Now.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
I really want to hear NWA in the next Guardians of the Galaxy movie.
We're straight out of the nebula.
All right, moving on. Bryan Singer, the director of X-Men Apocalypse and 3 other X-Men movies? Yes, 3 other X-Men movies. This week said that X-Men Apocalypse will be the film that gives us the birth of the X-Men as we know them as a team. Which is kind of what I've been asking for a while now.
Yeah.
Black and yellow.
Heroes? Right. Can you show me these heroes before they were what they were? I have seen some screenshots in which it just looks like Jean and Cyclops are wearing bulletproof vests.
Nope.
That doesn't give me any confidence. And also, the actress who's playing Jean Grey, Sophie Turner, is her name? I think
That's her.
She said that Cyclops is kind of a douchebag in the movie, which again, has there been any comics character? Has there been any comics character that has gotten a worse run of it than Cyclops in the movie adaptations?
Yes, Gambit, because he's not even fucking in them.
Good point.
But I like Cyclops, and he's gotten an absolute shit road so far. Like, and I'm tired of it. It's not even interesting anymore. Like, he was kind of a nice foil early on, and now it's like we've beaten this characterization to death.
Right. So I'm not going to judge the movie before I see it, but I guess that's what this podcast is about judging all kinds of shit before we see it, and then judging it after we see it.
Judging it while we see it, after we see it, after we see it again.
Just lots of judging.
Right.
I will say this for the X-Men films, though. I do like Bryan Singer. He seems like a guy who really cares about the source material.
Yeah.
If he was limited by what he could do and his relationship with Fox when they first started, he had to make decisions a certain way because of the era in which he made films. There was no superhero template, really, when they started making these X-Men movies.
No.
But he did say, he likes coming back to these movies because he loves the source material so much that he wants to be the guy that picks the young Jean Grey. He wants to be the guy that picks the young Storm. And he also said, if I keep saying stuff like this, I'll probably be directing these films until I'm dead. And I was like, you know what? It's not a bad life.
Wouldn't be the worst thing, yeah.
And the X-Men is a property that they have so much material.
You could direct them until you were dead because we could make another 50 movies.
And the time travel element allows you to reset whenever you need to.
Yeah. And you can make a whole movie about Jubilee, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, well, let's hold off on that one.
I don't know. Let's see. I think we can explore this. I would take a whole Cable movie.
We don't need to green light that one just yet.
You can be Bruce Campbell as Cable. I'd let him have his solo movie.
Bruce Campbell Cable.
Man, I'm so glad I came up with that idea.
Hashtag Bruce Campbell for Cable.
Let's rise up, Internet. All right.
But yes, shout out to our most recent subscriber, Bryan Singer. I'm glad you took Dave's suggestion. Thanks, buddy.
Appreciate it. Thanks, darling.
All right, from X-Men to X-Files. Last night's... I'm getting real good at segues, guys.
It was super good. I almost didn't know
so
you were
good.
Topics.
Almost good enough that we can stop actually pointing each one out.
Never. I will never stop pointing out good segues. From X-Men to X-Files. Last night's X-Files episode starred X-Files superfan Kumail Nanjiani. Kumail Nanjiani is on Silicon Valley, and if you don't watch Silicon Valley and you listen to the show, you probably are doing it wrong. So go watch Silicon Valley.
I'm doing it wrong.
If you have HBO Go, you can watch all of them. There are 2.5 seasons or 2 seasons, and it's premiering soon. You can probably watch them in a weekend. It's a great quick comedy that has a lot of funny people on it. But Kumail Nanjiani, if you guys don't know, is a guy who started a podcast called X-Files Files a couple of years ago, where he watches episodes of X-Files and talks about them with people. And it became so well known that he was an X-Files fanatic that when they did this revival, they cast him as a character on the show.
That's pretty boss.
And he was able to do an episode of his podcast with Mulder and Scully themselves.
Oh shit.
Yeah, which is pretty awesome for a guy who runs an X-Files podcast. And today he tweeted out that they, as a present, they gave him the actual X-File for his character that they used in the show. Isn't that... We are people who love geek memorabilia, and could you imagine being that guy, creating that podcast, having the show come back, interviewing your idols, starring in the show, guest starring, I guess, in the show,
getting your X-File,
actual X-File.
I guess I do expect that to be my reality at some point.
My head just exploded because
is that off?
I'd be like, we'd be at a work function. And I'd just be like, oh, hey, by the way, yeah, that sounds really good, team building. Anyways, have you seen my X-File? Because I just happen to have it here right now with me.
It was, and I did look at the picture way too closely than is socially acceptable, and I noticed it's actually signed by Dana Scully, and they actually had his picture in it. He's like, if you watch the episode and you didn't know who he was actually in a crocodile-looking suit, so you couldn't really see his actual face. And I think that's the perfect way to do it. Is take the Simon Pegg route where like
right.
Because that also had to be fun as hell that you get all mocked up into this weird crocodile beast thing. Like
exactly,
you're on the X-Files and you got a rad makeup job. Like because they could have just been like, hey, you're going to be Federal Agent number 8, and you're going to be sitting in a cubicle like typing, and that would have been rad. Like that still would have been an incredible thing, right? But instead, it's like you get to do makeup and become like weird crocodile guy.
Right.
That would be like if I took one of you and created the West Wingery podcast, and Aaron Sorkin listened to it and said, "You know what? I'm gonna bring the show back." And then all of a sudden,
and Dave, you're my new Josh Lyman.
not even that. I would just be like, just like a protester standing outside or some nonsense, or I would be like the next nominee for the Supreme Court, where I just get to be on one episode.
You come in, you just talk shit to the president, and then you fuck off.
Wear a big robe. Yeah. I would like to point out that Dave just said, "Take one of you," as if like we're not both good enough to go create a West Wing podcast. Tension growing on the PopNerdery Podcast as we speak. Listeners,
I'm gonna keep a scoreboard based on which one of you.
Have you finished the West Wing? Do you own the
Have I
box sets?
started?
Then in which case, I feel very comfortable about which one of them is coming out.
I know. It was pretty obvious. It was pretty obvious which one he was talking about. Let's be honest. But no,
someone jumped out to a commanding lead in the West Wingery podcast competition.
I will point out though, this whole concept, right? The nerd culture is self-identifying. The nerd culture has infiltrated Hollywood. It's there. They own it. They wear it like a badge of honor in many cases. You brought up Simon Pegg in episode 7. We also had Daniel Craig as a stormtrooper. We had Kevin Smith as a stormtrooper. I think it's safe to assume we're going to get Joseph Gordon-Levitt as a stormtrooper in episode 8 because he is Rian Johnson's Lucky Charm. Yeah. And probably any greater number of we could get a Mark Ruffalo or an Adrian Brody stormtrooper. So I'm just saying it's probably going to happen. I'm not saying I love.
We also had Rocky superfan Ryan Coogler direct Creed. We had Star Wars superfan J.J. Abrams direct Star Wars. So it really is the.
Well, no, but that's different though. That's celebrity superfan J.J. Abrams.
Yeah, I know, right?
And celebrity superfan Coogler.
Yeah, you know what? We just have a glass ceiling to break, guys. Just a barrier that we got.
We just need to make like 5 or 6 movies, and then we get interjected into all of our favorite shit.
Great point.
Just got to make one before you can make 5. So tomorrow starts.
I did say Kumail Nanjiani, star of Silicon Valley, not Kumail Nanjiani, host of the X-Files podcast.
I was going to say, so he started off with a very popular HBO show. Well, he was also doing something that was also very cool.
Yeah.
Guy was on HBO.
He's also eminently talented.
Well, no, I wasn't saying he wasn't.
All right, let's move on before I get depressed. I'm keeping my West Wing dream alive, guys. Supergirl episode 11, so season 1 episode 11, did a Martian Manhunter origin story.
Oh God, I'm gonna have to watch this show.
Yes, you absolutely do. I didn't watch any of the episodes up to it, but I watched that one on demand, and holy shit, was it good. The review for it that I read on Screen Rant kind of put it the best. So I'm just going to read the sentence from the review that I liked. They wrote, diehard comic book fans with little interest in the show would be the first to say that the origin story and John's struggle with rage, guilt, and sadness as a result are all as faithful to the source material as is possible.
Wow.
That's all I want to hear.
Yeah.
That's all I want to hear, guys. But I watched it, and it was fantastic. So if you need a reason to go watch that show, Martian Manhunter is it for me.
No, I'm in.
All right. Also, this is of limited interest, but Elizabeth Banks was cast in the Power Rangers movie as Rita Repulsa. So they cast 5.
I did not see this.
I know. They cast 5 kind of unknowns as the Power Rangers, so I think they had to put somebody in it whose name people would know. So Elizabeth Banks, if you don't know, has been in a lot of things, but she has been in kind of like most famously recently has been in the Pitch Perfect movies, and she directed the second one. So she is
Hunger
a very
Games is probably a bigger role for her.
Hunger Games.
Hunger Games.
The masses.
Yeah, and she's legitimately very funny.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, in general, I think Elizabeth Banks is remarkably underrated and underutilized. In Hollywood.
But going back, who is she in Hunger Games?
She's
Effie Trinket.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't know the characters all that well.
Truly, that's the only thing I would have known her from. Like, what is this? Is Pitch Perfect like a Glee thing?
No, it's the
Idol
Anna
thing?
Kendrick.
You don't know Elizabeth
acapella.
Banks?
No, I really don't.
Yeah.
But I know who Trinket is. So that I would go, oh, okay. But she's so like heavily make-upped in all
True.
of those that I didn't pick her out from these photos.
True.
Yeah, she was in Catch Me If You Can. She was in the Spider-Man movies of the early 2000s as Betty Brant.
I first saw her on Scrubs. In the late seasons of Scrubs, she
Who's
plays.
in Scrubs?
Yeah, she plays Zach Braff's baby mama.
Oh,
yeah.
From
that's
the late
her.
episodes.
Zach and Miri make a porno.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, she's hilarious. She's really funny.
She's very
The Wet Hot American Summer. Tell me you've seen.
Which I haven't watched that yet, but it's on my list.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, she's incredibly funny. Then that's fantastic news.
Yeah.
She also.
So I think they had to cast somebody.
She has a She was Wild Style in the Lego Movie too. That wouldn't help you recognize her as a person, but
no. But she was also very funny in that.
Yeah, she's got a great resume, and that speaks to my point. Elizabeth Banks, underappreciated, underutilized.
Agreed.
Yeah. And so they had to cast somebody with name value and somebody who can play over the top, which is the way I hope they're going with that. Because there's only one way to make Power Rangers palatable at this point, is to make it a little campy at least.
All camp all the time. Yeah. All camp all the time.
All right. In other movie news, Don Cheadle, there was a trailer released for a movie called Miles Ahead, which is a Miles Davis biopic, and Don Cheadle looks awesome in it. Like the whole movie just looks really good. I don't know if it's going to get, being released now, if it's going to get like Oscar buzz like Ray did, or like the Johnny Cash Walk the Line got. But it looks like a pretty good movie.
I was really hesitant. I really, really love Miles Davis. To the point where if there is an afterlife, then Miles was waiting at the gate for Bowie to get up there and went, oh, thank God, someone cool got up here finally. Like, that dude defined eras the same way that Bowie did. So in the same way I think I'd be really worried about a Bowie biopic, I was very concerned about a Miles Davis biopic. And Don Cheadle looks every bit the part. And that's actually has made me feel very, very comfortable at going, oh, thank God, they got it.
Let's talk about a little bit of hashtag science.
Hashtag science. Shout out to friend of the podcast, Keith.
And I don't think this news is particularly. It's never a good way to start out a news item by saying it's not all that important. But I'm just obsessed with Topher's recommendation from a couple of weeks ago, Seven Eves by Neil Stevenson. I've been listening to that on Audible and have been pretty space and NASA obsessed for a little while. So when I saw that NASA launched its first super heavy lift vehicle since the Saturn V, that was interesting to me. So we haven't launched super heavy objects into space with American-made rockets since 1973. We've used the Soyuz and the other like Russian rockets for the last 40-ish years, and this rocket is going to carry what are called cube satellites to the moon to look for ice and hydrogen and whatnot, and that sounds interesting to me.
And if we can put this into context, it's awesome. It's going to go carry the satellite and everything else, but what this actually is talking about is figuring out a propulsion system to go to Mars. This is the start of that program. So when we talk about things like Seven Eves and The Martian and our long-standing discussion of how the fuck do we get off this godforsaken rock, this is a step into we're starting to think about propulsion again, because that's always been the problem for us. So that's why this news is, aside from just like great science it's going to do, which is rad, but this is the first step towards let's figure out how we, shoot things across the galaxy.
Fuel is expensive.
And heavy.
And very heavy until it's in space. Speaking of, just randomly, I saw a pretty good, I don't remember if it was a cartoon or what, but it came across my Twitter timeline this weekend. It said, "Are you really a fan of science, or do you just kind of think stars are pretty?"
Well,
I just appreciated that.
My whole problem with the Astro Twitter handle and fuck I love science on Facebook or something like that I see a bunch of. It's all these accounts that are like, oh, fucking science, and then they post like horribly photoshopped things. It's like the Horseshoe Nebula, and it's like that's our Northern Lights superimposed over like the fucking Milky Way. Like, stop. You have nothing to do with science. Science is boring until it's revolutionary, and then it goes back to boring.
Yes. Yep.
Knock it the fuck off.
And the thing is, in order to slog through boring to get to revolutionary, you need funding. So.
Yeah. So Dave exploded, but also you need context. Context is also important. So this heavy lift vehicle, which NASA has been touting, what they should have been doing is, this is stage one in figuring out how we're going to throw a human being to Mars.
Yeah. And
we're going to do some other stuff first, but we're going to chuck a human to Mars.
Speaking of stage one to chucking a human to Mars, Elon Musk said that SpaceX. Well, sorry, I don't want to chuck Elon Musk to Mars. That's not where I was going.
That's aggressive.
He wants people to volunteer to do it.
Yeah, he said that they're going to be announcing in the fall, potentially, their first rough plans and a rough timeline on how they're going to progress to a plan to Mars. It was very exciting. So if you guys want to see somebody on Mars, call your damn congressman and tell him to fund NASA more than they
put George Lucas on Mars.
Yeah, well, we can all get behind that. But also, just know that getting to Mars would require a lot of time, because it's difficult to get a spaceship going that fast, because fuel is heavy.
And it's far away.
It's very, very far away. But
farther than any one of us have ever traveled.
I guess if we were all shot in the general direction of Mars, we would have enough time to listen to and read and watch all of the media that we have been neglecting. And that's just what we're going to talk about in our B segment. We will be right back.
Today's show is brought to you by Amazon. Go to PopNerdery.com/Amazon and shop just like you normally would. Get the same Amazon products that you know and love, and you can even support the show.
So, for instance, when you're doing your weekly 11-inch pewter wizard collectible shopping, you can go straight through the PopNerdery.com/Amazon link, shop like you normally would.
It's perfect. Pop Nerdery is part of the Amazon Associates program, which means you get the same selection, the same tragically low prices of the Amazon that you know and love. And if you're a Prime member, you get the same Prime 2-day shipping that you normally would get. Plus, you support Pop Nerdery, and that's it. It seems pretty basic.
What's not basic is deciding whether Stormborn the Warbringer goes on the left, Draws with the Hated goes on the right, and which one of them is finally going to get that coveted middle spot. That's complicated. This is easy.
Exactly. None of this is complicated. Bookmark PopNerdery.com/Amazon in your favorite browser today, and remember, click it every time you shop.
Welcome back to the Pop Nerdery Podcast. Here in the B segment, we're going to spread out a little bit. Like a tie-dyed t-shirt in that red corner that you thought would just be a comfortable shoulder accent, and instead soaks all the way through to mid-chest. Well, that's what we're going to do here with our topic, and we're going to talk about Time, the Pink Floyd song from their influential... No, actually not just that song. We're going to discuss not only the metric that we all kind of base all of our pop culture decisions on, how much time can I actually give this thing, but then also we're going to make some recommendations for quick binges where I don't have time to dig teeth deep and fall down that rabbit hole. What can I consume that's going to be interesting and fun, that also isn't going to just completely strip my whole week away. So I think that this is a two-pronged topic. The first one is being, what truly is worth time to say, like, yes, time is a limited factor. It is a flat circle. What are you willing to just give full demand to? And saying, like, yeah, I get it. Like, we only have so much time to dig into these things, but this thing is worth completely going nuts into, versus here's some stuff when you just have, like, I just have an hour. I'd like to bust out 2 episodes of something. What is that kind of go-to move? So I want to touch on the what's worth your time first, and I want to go to Brent and say, what's the thing where you're saying, like, I've got time to invest. What's the move?
Okay, so I mean, you basically got it up there and alley-ooped me right into time is a flat circle. I mean, that's an easy place to go to if we're talking bang for your buck, buck in the form of time.
Correct.
True Detective was a foundational viewing for me over the past 5-10 years probably. And it's 8 episodes, 10 episodes?
Yeah, something
8?
like that.
I think 8. Yes, they're an hour apiece, but I think it's very
season.
Yeah, it's season 1 we're talking about here, friends. But
yes.
that was.
Wait, for the record,
awesome.
have any of us completed the second season?
No.
Okay.
No, I started.
Yes.
Couldn't
Did you finish it?
But I barely remember how it ended or why I should care.
Which is the point I was making, is that we're specifically talking about season 1, which I truly view as a transformative TV experience.
Agreed.
Yeah, and I think that is, you bring up True Detective, you can also bring up any show that is like tooling around with this idea of we're going to change cast and each season will be a story in and of itself. Like, I haven't dug into the new Fargo, but I've heard it's the same sort of thing where the first season has a cast and a story and a location. The second season has a self-contained cast and story and location.
The exact same way that American Horror Story has now, churned through. I think they're on the 4th or 5th. I'm only through 3 of those right now, but it's the exact same way where you've got they're longer than True Detective, which is just 8 episodes or whatever. But and Fargo, I think Fargo is just a 12-episode season, I'm going to say.
Yes. Yeah.
And one of the biggest values of that is, especially in today's world of streaming, you can let this thing go by, and then based on the reviews, pick and choose which of the seasons you want to do. So podcast listeners, if you've never seen True Detective, watch season 1. Don't bother with season 2. If you've never seen American Horror Story, watch season 1. Maybe none of the others. But yeah.
I would say if you watch season 1 of American Horror Story and that piques your interest and it's your thing, then you will find enjoyment in all of those.
Yes, absolutely. But you can wait to invest in each of them. And that creator, I think Ryan Murphy, is now doing an American American. Oh crap! There's some spin-offs that are coming out. I think it's American Crime Story, and I want to say there's another one too.
And he's also doing the O.J. Simpson trial biopic thing with Cuba Gooding Jr. in it. But for me, that's the thing, right? When I'm looking for something that is worth my time, I'm looking for something where I can feel a sense of accomplishment, and for me, that is the wrapping up of a full story. And that's kind of why I love trade paperbacks, right? A trade paperback is, maybe it's not the full run, but typically when you read one arc of a comic series in a trade paperback, you're getting a full arc.
You're going all the way A, B to C.
Yep, correct.
There will be some kind of resolution. There might be loose ends, but you're going to get the major arc tied up.
Right. So I think that's, I was going to say just comic book one-shots. So any one-shot that you can grab. But
I don't feel like that's as fulfilling though. I'm kind of with you.
Yeah. I like to see, and a one-shot, is maybe 5-10 minutes, whereas a trade paperback that collects 6 issues of a comic series, that might take, it might take a half hour, it might take 45 minutes, and then you'll have, I'm talking about if you read it and then go back and really enjoy the art.
Okay.
Speaking of,
Yeah.
Speaking of, Dave, we just had this conversation, and I'd love for you to posit to the listeners and our other comic aficionado how you absorb, a graphic novel.
Yeah, and we were talking about this because I just recently lent Brent Civil War in preparation for the new Cat movie and AVX. So what I do when I read a comic book, and this allows me to get through the story in a proper amount of time, but also kind of enjoy it, is I read through the text bubbles, I glance at the pictures enough to get the action, and then when I'm done with the story, I go back and I re-look at the art, because I do feel like it is a medium where you have both words and pictures, and it takes a lot more time to get the art right, so you better go back and appreciate it.
I read words to the end, and I glance at panels, and that kind of to me is the beauty of owning the trade paperback, is that I read through everything, that gives me everything I need to know, and then I'm like, oh, that was great, that's great. I shut it, I put it on the shelf for 2 months, and I go back and have a completely different experience reading it, because this time, I already know the plot, so now I'm here to absorb details. It's the same thing, when you go see a movie for the second time, you're not, the first time you see it, you're all about A to B to C, show me this plot arc. The second time, you're you don't have to worry about, catching the story, so you're there to absorb details. That's why I'm with Dave. I think that, I'm almost exclusively to the point where I just read trade paperbacks now, simply because I like to ingest comics as, first I want the story, and then I want to kind of marinate on it and go back and get the art. So that's my move. Brent, tell me about things.
Yeah, I think the point of all this is that graphic novels, trade paperbacks, are very doable as a one-stop shop, easy binge, right? Bang for your buck. And then it's also really not that outrageous to think about picking it up a week later or immediately back to back and running through all the great imagery of it to really fully capture the experience.
But more importantly, it also saves you all the time month to month.
Yes.
Getting it. I mean, truly, I love my local comic shop, and that's where I go buy my trade paperbacks. But I don't buy single books anymore, simply because that to me is too great a time investment.
Yeah. Another one that comes to mind, and is something we've actually talked about a bit on this podcast, is visual dictionaries. And this is something that I have actually come to appreciate a little bit more recently. My child is very, very much into Legos, very, very much into Star Wars right now, and we have been able to, from just our local library, grab some awesome content in the form of visual dictionaries. And I had similar things growing up, the essential guide to Star Wars characters, the essential guide to Star Wars vehicles, all those. It's a lot of content. You can take as much or as little as you want from it, but it's such a binge-worthy deep dive that you can absorb quickly. Toph, thoughts?
Yeah, you're 100% right. That's an amazing way to get kids into that kind of stuff, or even just not even kids. That's not fair.
Yeah, I'm a kid then.
No, but that's you made a good point. That's a really fast way to get caught up on the entirety of the universe, so you could jump in and do something else.
Right.
Those compendium pieces, right? So when we're talking about how an effective use of your time, if you're going to jump into Civil War, there's 40 years of backstory in front of that.
Yeah. Right.
However, if you pick up one of those compendium pieces, that's a very quick way to set a stage for one of the specific runs. We're talking about Civil War or Dark Knight Returns or anything else. Those are amazing ways to get all the backstory you need without saying okay, well, you need to do these 5 runs and
right.
one shots, and then that'll kind of scoop everything up. Tangential to that is also when you go to your library, tell them about the books that you love.
Absolutely.
I had a long conversation with my youth librarian today, as my child and I were. I went to pick up a hold at my library, and he demanded to get an Iron Man book, and I was like, okay.
You picked up a hole? I don't understand that sentence.
Old. I got a book from another library that came into my library. I went in to pick it up, and my kid was inside, and he was like, Dada, books? And I was like, absolutely. What would you like? And he goes, Iron Man. Repulsor hands. And I was like, yes, you may absolutely have an Iron Man book, kid. So we went over, and he was like, Dada, no Iron Man. Dada, no Iron Man. And I was like, no, they don't have any Iron Man. And the librarian came through, and she was like, what is he looking for? And I was like, A, that's awesome that you're addressing him and not me, like, wait, what's the fucking runt one? He's like, what is he looking for? And I was like, so you should have a Dark Knight Returns, Long Halloween, and just went through, like, my top 10 of shit, and I was like, my library should have this, because hopefully there's some other kid who comes through and goes, Mom, I want a Batman book. And she pulls out, Dark Knight Returns, and I've made that kid's life better. So
there is a lot of youth fiction in that wheelhouse. Now some of it's kind of unbearable, but I actually have done some of those little books, where they have Wolverine and Hulk as like the big-footed characters walking around doing stuff, and it doesn't match tonally all the time, but it's a good gateway drug if you want your kids to get into that sort of thing.
Yeah, and we were talking about the gateway drug one, but also giving you 40 years of backstory in one thing. DK Books actually put out a bunch of really good visual histories. There's I think a DC Comics visual history. Marvel calls it something different. They call it a visual chronicle.
Yes, I have that one.
And then there's a Batman visual history where they go year by year and tell you what were the most important stories. They give you a quick little blurb tease and a little bit of what was going on, and it gives you full runs and kind of like trades to go look for.
And it also is the one that updates like what gear he has year by year. Doesn't it have that blurb, which I find this so fascinating. Because, I have a kid, he's 2, and I've been showing him the 60s Batman TV series.
Right.
Which includes things like the Bat Shark spray.
Oh, yeah.
And now, like, if you looked at, like, Dark Knight Returns, like, he supposedly, in any one of those series, that he'd be like, I'm going to fight Bane. Back shark repellents. It's like, no. The character evolution is so fascinating.
Yes.
If it works on a shark, it'll work on a Bane.
Well, spray the shit on a Bane with and the best part is it's like shark repellent, whale repellent, which a mammal and not really, a predator. I think manta ray is one of them, and it's just like, oh my god, like, what weird shit has Batman been up to in this universe that he needs these things? Like, well, Robin, I went out and tried to fuck this whale's blowhole, and it got really aggressive, so now I need this, like, whale spray. And Robin's like, Jesus, Batman? What the fuck? I guess.
Not out of the question for Adam West.
No.
That guy had some weird tastes.
He's into a lot of things.
He has interests.
To bring it back to movies and TV.
To bring it back to things that aren't Adam West fucking whales.
One short binge that you can do in a night, and you can do with your significant other if you have one, and you can laugh your ass off while also kind of thinking, is on Amazon Prime, the first season of Catastrophe. Catastrophe is 6 episodes. It's a British show with Rob Delaney of Twitter, is how you probably know Rob Delaney, and Sharon Horgan. And the story is that an American businessman on a trip to Europe accidentally impregnates a British woman and decides to move there and help raise the child. And it's a weird thing that they could have done in a way that was like very by the book romantic comedy, but they didn't. And it's 100% worth your time. Both of them are hilariously funny. And Rob Delaney's the kind of guy, when he's on screen, he could totally take the air out of the room. And she 100% holds her own, if not, steals scenes at times. So cool. That one it's 6 half-hour episodes, so you could, and the half-hour episodes, they're not always 30 minutes. Sometimes it's 21, 22. You could do that in a night.
I know nothing about this. I love it.
but I'm into that kind of thing. I think that Dave kind of hit on something there, is that there's a very separate British tradition of cinema or TV that's completely separate to the American tradition, which in terms of like quick binges, if you look at new Sherlock from the BBC, those have been 3-episode seasons. I mean, that's you can get through the whole thing in a night. And we're up to 4 of those. So like the same thing with Peaky Blinders, which I recommended on the show before. Those are only 6-episode seasons, I think. I mean, no more than that.
And same thing with Luther, which we've talked about.
Luther is a great point as well. Like, those are built to, they come out less frequently, which can be an annoyance, because you want more of a good thing. But in terms of like, those are why I tend to recommend those kinds of shows, because it's very easy to like snap through all of that backstory.
Yeah. And the thing is like when you're recommending shows now, you have to do 2 things. You have to recommend, 1, you have to give the elevator pitch to get people interested in it, and 2, you have to tell them why it's convenient for them to ingest it. Or you have to tell them here is a convenient way to ingest it. To say, hey, do you have Netflix? Yes, you do. Okay, here's a thing. Here's the quick pitch. It's good, and this is why, and here's who's in it. And also, it's only 6 half-hour episodes.
Right.
It really is. You're convincing people to give up their time to watch this thing.
Sure.
And
You're
I
saying
think
anything else you could be doing is less important than whatever.
Right.
Yeah, it's this, it's this combination of these 5 or 6 factors that determine whether, any one person is actually going to invest the time or the resources to watch a thing. So you have to give them all angles of it. So that was well said, Dave. I think that's part of why it seems like a lot of our generation is right now kind of going goo goo gaga over documentaries. For the exact same reasons we've been talking about. You can argue it's a biased standpoint or viewpoint of these things, but you get a easily digested, really quick overview of all the pertinent facts of a topic you know nothing about, and then get pretty deep into it and come out feeling like you are either more educated, better able to make decisions, or at least like have found a new passion about something. Making a Murderer.
That's a great
swept
example.
The nation. The Serial podcast swept the nation. That's another place that I would argue we can absolutely talk about is podcasts. Yes, it's a little bit self-fulfilling prophecy here that we are a podcast touting the awesomeness of podcasts, but we definitely live in a culture where whether you're exercising, commuting, traveling, whatever, and you need easily digestible morsels, podcasts are a great way to do that.
Which is why I watched Ex Machina, because I needed something to observe while I was on a horrible goddamn exercise bike. So,
Yeah, I think I struggle, Brent. I struggle with podcasts for the same reason. You mentioned our generation is going goo goo gaga over documentaries. I think our generation is going a little bit crazy because when we were growing up, you always had enough time. Also because we weren't working, right? But you had enough time.
Your generation is stupid as fuck. I want to bring up.
We had more time before we had jobs, but there wasn't as much stuff to consume. So you could be a completist, right? You could be a quality TV completist, or you could be a critically acclaimed movies completist. When we were younger.
The accessibility of the volumes of media that we have now wasn't the same to our parents. Yes.
And the sheer volume of it all is difficult for me. Where I want to be the guy who watches. If I watch the X-Files, I want to watch 200 episodes of the X-Files, which is difficult because that's a difficult amount of time to put into something. That's why I get so much satisfaction out of like watching something like Black Mirror. I get a similar feeling.
Yes.
But Black Mirror is 3-episode seasons, and each episode is each episode is an hour, and they're on different topics. So I get a sense of completion every time I watch an hour-long episode.
All right.
Yeah,
as the
and you
only
don't have to
non-millennial on this podcast, I need to bring us back to some semblance of normalcy. Because
hey, I want to be the guy who has enough time to watch 200 episodes of the X-Files, but I am not. I don't have that amount of time.
I want to say, like, we've recommended some awesome things that are very quick, and being quick doesn't necessarily make them bad. In fact, a lot of them being quick makes them great because you get small doses of it, and that's how you want to consume it. However, I also have to say that there's something to a very long, protracted enjoyment of something where it's the same thing. You've got the same amount of time to invest in it. However, you're going to do something like a Twin Peaks, or you're going to do, someone has recommended you to go back and do, maybe it is Star Trek Deep Space Nine, or Twin Peaks, or Lost, or, whatever it is that's, or X-Files. X-Files is maybe the perfect example of, if you like this small dose of something, as a nerd, you're also going to want to sink your teeth into this thing. And even if you do it at like small bites at a time, there's still something to be said for a deep dive into something.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm the guy who has already brought up The West Wing twice on this podcast.
You have.
And have done it and I've told you guys that
Patrick!
It has 155 episodes, and I've watched it 4 times.
The good news is you only need to watch like 100 of them, and then you can turn them off.
But that's the thing. I think is an example of, there are some things that are certainly worth devoting that amount of time to, because you get more out of it the more time you spend with it, like an X-Files, or like,
And I think that what I tend to do with that is watch a season and then jump onto something else. Yeah. And then do a season of that, and then come back to it, and like in much in the same way you do, where you go through the fall, and then in the summer you don't have new episodes of a thing. I tend to, oddly enough, I follow the same schedule that TV produces for me.
See, my thing is actually jumping mediums. Like, I'll watch a show, and then I'll go listen to a book, and then I'll go find a music artist that I've always wanted to get into, and then I turn on Spotify. That was actually one I was going to bring up. Gone are the days where you have to buy an album and listen to that whole album, or if you're on the totally opposite end of the spectrum, that you just turn on the radio and listen to one song from a person you don't need to memorize their name.
You have to suffer through.
Right. I mean, either option, you still can use streamable music sources like a Spotify or what have you, and that's a really easy and fun way to consume. What do you think, Toph?
I think that one of the things that is kind of almost like, obviously everything always gets better, but I feel like we're kind of at a nerd nirvana here in terms of streaming, because you can very quickly like jump into a thing, consume a bit of it, figure out if you're into it or not, and then move on to the next thing. Like, it used to be is like, oh, I've got to rent, or I've got to mail off a Netflix disc, or I've got to, now it's very quickly, like, it's kind of the beauty of the situation where we have more media to consume now than ever. And sometimes that feels like an awful thing, because you're like, I'll never get to watch all the cool shit.
Yes.
But the beauty of it is that,
it's like, you're burden.
Totally. But you're not like, okay, I sat down.
Hashtag third world problems, right?
I know. But in the same way that you don't have to sit down and watch a TV show at a time, and like, oh, I've got to rearrange my day to watch the old X-Files like we used to have to do. Now it's just like, I'm going to go check out the 2 episodes that are on my DVR, and I see if I'm into this thing. And if I'm not, then great, I haven't wasted anything. Like, I want to present the idea that you've never had more chances to watch awesome shit, and if something's not your bag, get the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
Go do something else.
Yeah. It is hard when you get a recommendation. Like, if one of you guys says, "Hey Dave, it's really worth your time to jump into Deep Space Nine," for example.
Totally. And
if I do watch
and you should.
If I watch the first like 4 or 5 episodes and I go, "Oh man, I don't know if this is for me yet," I do feel a little bit of guilt where I go, "Do I not get it?" Am I not good enough for Deep Space Nine?
Right.
Or whatever the case is.
That's for sure.
It's been documented. I had that exact guilt with Blade Runner, right?
And you should.
And that goes back to our whole conversation that we had earlier. I don't remember the episode off the top of my head, but when we talked about the right time to do this stuff.
And
so
Brett talked about how he didn't like Doctor Who at some point. That was also a thing. But no, I in all seriousness, like I recommended Doctor Who to Brent and Deep Space Nine to Dave, and if neither of them like that thing, go do something else with your time.
Yeah,
right.
Mazel tov. Like l'chaim. Go do other things. Like that's the beauty of the era we live in, where you're no longer trapped by a time paradigm.
Yeah.
Go find another thing you're into.
I do think, and I don't know if you guys feel this is true or not, but you mentioned this nerd nirvana that we live in. I think that we're in the middle of the Oreo, right? We used to have this time where things weren't available to us.
Was that the part where you were going through the cookie part?
No, I'm talking about we're in like the creamy center.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like when we did
our parents were in the cookie. That's what he's saying. Yeah.
And we're in the cream.
Where nothing was available to us, and or it was, but you really search it out, and there wasn't as much to choose from. Right now we're in the middle, where there's a ton to choose from. Everything is catered to us, and
our children will live in an era where totalitarian states decide what they get to see again. Like what goes back to the cookie.
That'll be the cookie.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's like right now it's fairly cheap for us to watch this stuff, and
I'll be dead by then. So mazel tov.
Exactly. Are we just living in the perfect time?
Do you think that we're in are these the salad nerd days?
Yeah. No.
Do you think it'll get worse from here? Because I honestly think it'll get better.
Worse, better, opening dish. How many course meal is this? That's what I need to establish.
Translate this into food. Where am I? Am I eating salad? What's
this metaphor is confusing. It went from a cookie to a 4-course meal.
I feel like we're at the pinnacle of nerddom, but it's only going to get better from here.
I think
everyone will find ways to monetize their old content, and I see this a lot. Like after I watched Ex Machina, I went back into my Amazon recommended for you movies, and there were a ton of really old sci-fi.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
After I'd watched that, and I went, okay, a lot of this seems weird. Like I don't need Lothar from the planet Zoltar in my recommendations. Like that's a bridge too far. But there was a lot of old weird shit in there that I was like, oh, I never would have been exposed to this.
Yeah.
Unless you went to a flea market and looked through the VHS tapes.
Yeah, exactly. I would have had to physically flip through a lot of things that were covered in dust and semen in a weird guy's booth. And instead, Amazon is just going hey, you watched a weird sci-fi movie. Would you like other weird sci-fi movies? And I was like, hell yes, I would, Amazon.
You know what? It wouldn't be your first time going to that booth. Let's not lie to the listeners.
Yeah, but I go to that booth for other reasons normally. It just got weird because I'm just here for sci-fi.
To add your dust and semen to things, is that?
I got a bag of both.
Yes, I think the big thing is that we are living in an era where the accessibility is so great and the ease by which we can change mediums is very, very poignant. I today watched 15 minutes of a Twin Peaks episode and immediately turned over to a podcast. Finished up a podcast that I had started and immediately put on a YouTube video. So it's does that mean that I have ADD, or does that just mean that I have that ability and so I can continue to consume large quantities at a high rate?
Yeah. I think both. And honestly, when you talked about switching mediums, I do the same thing. Where right now I'm listening to Seven Eves. Seven Eves on Audible is a 31-hour book. I'll listen to Seven Eves.
Wow.
Right. So I'll listen to Seven Eves on my drive for the next 15 days. I'll listen to Seven Eves on my drive to and from work, and I'll knock that book out. And then when I get back, I'll have 2 weeks worth of podcast episodes that are banked up for me, and I'll pick and choose through the ones that I want to listen to, and that's how I spend my drive to and from work.
So I think that maybe the consensus we've come to is that there's stuff that is a perfect, I want a quick binge, and there's stuff that is kind of split into the secondary category of this is a thing that you want to dive deep into. Tell us about that. Hit us up in the comments, popnerdery.com, follow up on episode 12. Tell us the ways that you get stuff in to your eyeballs and ears, because Lord knows we could use some help. And with that, we'll be back in a minute.
Today's show is brought to you by Audible. Go to popnerdery.com/audible and sign up for a free trial to support the show and get hours of entertainment.
Audible is perfect for people who don't like to read words and instead want to hear words.
Exactly, Toph. With your Audible free trial, you get 2 free audiobooks to start. When the trial ends, you get 1 audiobook a month for $14.95 a month. You also receive 30% off the price of every additional audiobook that you purchase. You can cancel at any time, and unlike Netflix, you get to keep your books even when you cancel.
That sounds like a better deal than the time that cop caught me listening to 50 Shades of Grey that I got from Audible and let me off with a warning as soon as I promised to put my pants back on.
That's right, listeners. Go to popnerdery.com/audible to sign up for your free trial, and then tell your friends. That way they can share in your audiobook goodness.
Hello again. Sadly, this brings us to the end of the show. Definitely thank you very much for listening. Before we leave you, though, we will give you little tidbits to taste and munch on. We give each other recommendations, and hopefully you as a listener will get some ideas from the recommendations we give to each other. Dave, I will throw to you first. What do you got for us this week, buddy?
Yeah, given that we talked about time and not having enough of it in our B segment, and also given that last week when I had to choose a superpower, I chose the ability to stop time. And given that we are recording on Groundhog Day today, I'm going to go ahead.
Given that we're recording at a time on a clock.
And given that I literally am recording this for the second time and just said this twice in a row because of technology, we literally just Groundhog Day'd my recommendation of Groundhog Day. In 1993, there was a film called Groundhog Day. It starred Bill Murray. It starred Andie MacDowell. It starred Chris Elliott. Even had a little Stephen Tobolowsky thrown in there for you.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, it did. I don't think I have to sell people on Groundhog Day, but my experience with this film was tainted a little bit when I was a kid because the poster for Groundhog Day was up in the video store that I went to, and if you guys don't remember the poster, it was probably like a DVD re-release poster, some damn thing, and it had Bill Murray's face inside of a clock while Andie MacDowell stood next to it, and it looked like the cheesiest romantic comedy poster that I had ever seen.
Straight bad rom-com.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this movie is so much deeper than that. And
oh God, yeah.
I didn't give it a chance until I was much older, and I mean, luckily I did. Luckily, I understood the comedy pedigree that was coming with this movie, being that it was a Harold Ramis movie and a Bill Murray movie.
Yeah.
But there's just so much stuff to dive into, kind of in a similar way to Back to the Future. It's a time travel movie that has a lot of different kind of things that make your brain go crazy the more and more you watch it. For example, there was the team of researchers that determined that that he would have had to have been stuck in that same day for something like 10,000 years in order to learn all the skills that he learned. And
I'm so glad you cited that because I was just looking it up.
And every time I watch it, I contemplate whether or not I would want to be stuck in that reality because I would have enough time to consume everything that I can consume. But it would also mean that you get nothing new and you have no new experiences and things like that. So it's an interesting watch, and I thought it was appropriate for today, and especially today's episode.
Certainly apropos. and an all-time favorite of mine. So great recommendation. Certainly, grandmothers and grandfathers, if you haven't watched it, get that in your eyeballs. How about you, Toph? What you got for us this week, pal?
I'm gonna make a timely recommendation. Yeah, and as I truly do love Groundhog Day, because anytime that Bill Murray gets a Jew scenery, I'm into that.
Absolutely.
It's just so good. But The Venture Bros Season 6, Episode 1 came out last week. And if you liked cartoons anywhere between like 1975 and like 1995, The Venture Brothers is kind of like an incredible distillation of all of them, from like a Johnny Quest to a Scooby-Doo to a G.I. Joe.
Nice.
Like it encompasses everything in there. It's on the Cartoon Network in their Adult Swim block. It is the 6th season now that's coming out. I highly recommend going back and getting that. But the 6th season just started this week, and I mean, I don't know how to recommend this more than if you liked cartoons in any like basically like the last 3 decades, this show pulls tropes from all of them and passes them on into their own thing.
Okay.
Nice.
So
I can get on board with that. The Adult Swim, brand certainly carries a lot of credence with me, and I actually, remember going back to, my 8, 9, 10 years of age where I knew I was past the point where I was supposed to be watching cartoons, but I would sit in front of the Cartoon Network, hands on chin, just eating it all up. Johnny Quest and what is it, Thundar the Barbarian. Like, what a perfect example of like a weird fucking show that they revamped. So if you watch that shit as a kid, like Johnny Quest and Thundar the Barbarian and everything else, like Venture Brothers distills all of that into that show, and it's very self-aware. It's wonderful. So there are 6 seasons of it. Most of the seasons are actually pretty short, which ties in wonderfully to our B segment that allows you to binge them quickly. And the 6th season just started. So go ahead, put that in your eyeballs. It's fun. I mean, it truly is a very kind of warped trip down memory lane for a lot of those shows like Johnny Quest or Thundar the Barbarian or Thundercats, G.I. Joe, whatever else. You like it, you love it, put it in your eyeballs. Cool. Great rec. So for me, since we've been talking about time, one of the most recent episodes of the podcast Song Exploder was the management song Time to Pretend. It came on my radar because of that episode, actually. Song Exploder is a podcast that is done really tastefully. The episodes are relatively short. I think most of them are under 20 minutes, in fact. This podcast takes a song. Many of them you're probably at least mildly familiar with, if not very familiar with, and talks to the songwriter, talks to a musician or a producer that worked on this song in the studio, and breaks down the actual elements of the track or how the recording was done.
Nice.
And the host of the podcast actually doesn't do a lot of talking. He kind of sits back and lets the musician tell a story on their own and break things out. They take the audio track and they splice it into the individual tracks so that you can hear all of the individual elements. And it sometimes gives you a pretty strange look in the kitchen, so to speak, of all of the ingredients that goes into the pie. But it's a really, really fascinating read, especially if you're a music nerd like myself.
Where do we find this kind of thing?
So if you've ever heard of the Apple product iTunes, you can log into iTunes.
Do you go to the podcast section and search PopNerdery?
First, you subscribe to PopNerdery,
right?
And then you subscribe to Song Exploder. And that podcast has many more episodes than we do at this point, but not nearly the amount of Brent, Toph, and Dave. So, just
so
saying.
It sounds like a good supplementary podcast to ours.
Absolutely. So yes, friends, subscribe to other podcasts, listen to other things, as many as you can, make them binge-worthy, let us know what those binge-worthy items are, and hopefully we will see you then in episode 13. You can find me on the Twitters at shouldn'tbragbut. Dave, our listeners can find you where?
I tweet for the show at PopNerdery.
Toph?
I'm going to make all of you disappointed until basically June because I'm mad at your sports team at the hospital ball.
As always, we will end the show with the host shooting some finger guns at his buddies. Finger guns.
Love you, boys.
Love you, Lou Holtz.
Boom! Touchdown Notre Dame. Lou Holtz. You're telling how to sing. I'm sorry. I know that means more cuts for you, but it was worth it. I'm just not even mad.
I'm just going to write in my notes. I'm going to write Lou Holtz in my notes.
Hashtag Lou Holtz. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Dave. But it was worth it. It was so worth it. Touchdown Notre Dame.